This is the Working in Hell podcast with your host, Vinny Blasio. Each episode, Vinny takes you inside the world of New York State Corrections, focusing on both corrections officer and law enforcement issues. And now your host, Vinny Blasio.
Good morning, everyone. This is Vinny Blasio with the Working in Hell podcast. We have two special guests with us today from the Western New York Law Enforcement Helpline. So today we have Anthony LeBron and Melissa Harte with us. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Vinny.
Good morning.
Good morning. So as I promised in the previous episodes that we wanted to get into the officers' health and awareness campaign, and we just have the two special guests and coordinate our schedules together. So we are supporting the Western New York Law Enforcement Helpline. So we'll get into the ways that you can support them as well. Predominantly, this is in the Western New York area, but we'll let our guests give a little bio about themselves and about what the organization does to everybody. So go ahead, guys. You can take it away.
Okay. You want to go first?
Go ahead.
All right. So my name is Tony LeBron. I am retired from Buffalo Police. I did 33 years with them. I had a great career there and wore many different hats, part of the union, was a hostage negotiator, worked as a community police officer. But one of my most fulfilling roles was running the peer team for the Buffalo Police Department. I did that as well.
Wow, very nice. All right. How about you, Melissa? It's your turn.
Hi, I am Melissa Harte. I'm the coordinator for the helpline. I started off as a family peer when it began in 2018. I did the training. And then about a year after there, Tony asked me to be the coordinator, which started off at 4 hours a week. And now I'm just part-time. I'm the only paid employee with the helpline. Everyone else is all volunteer. My husband is in law enforcement. We've been married for almost 14 years now. I've seen the best and the worst part of law enforcement. And I probably joined the helpline because I needed help myself, not realizing it. And I'm grateful to be here.
Oh, well, thank you both for being here with us. So if you can just give us a little background on how the organization started it and the hows and the why and what support services are actually available. And then we'll get into the nuts and bolts. And if there's any I'll put on the screen now the one flyer as far as what they are providing and who they actually help, which is just about everyone. But just so Tony sees the information for the Western New York Law Enforcement Helpline, and obviously I'll put at the bottom in a second here the actual website. And for those that are listening to us on audio, that website is WNY Law Enforcement Helpline.org. Am I correct on that, Tony?
Yes, sir.
All right. So that's that. And that's another flyer. Let me remove that. Okay, we're back there. Let me try to find the banner and I'll put that up. So if you just want to give there we go. There we go. So again, for those that are on audio, that's www.wnylawenforcementhelpline.org. So just give us a little background and how it got started and who you're actually here to help. A lot of people are familiar with your organization, but not everybody. So if you just want to fill us in right from scratch and we'll get the information out, especially to those of the family of the law enforcement groups.
Okay, so we're going to go back in time over 30 plus years. There is an organization that's still working in the Western New York community called the Western New York Stress Reduction Program. They primarily were working with fire and EMS. In 2008, two individuals by the name of Mike Walters and Benita Frazier realized that the services going to fire and EMS could be as equally beneficial to the law enforcement community. So at that point in time, they got together with others and they created in 2008 the Western New York Police Helpline. And I'll give you kind of what it is. So it really is a 24/7 crisis services for law enforcement by law enforcement. Time went on, and in 2017, we wanted to kind of do things in a different way, take it in a different direction. So we created our own 501c3 in 2017, and we changed the name to the Western New York Law Enforcement Helpline. The reason for that was there were a lot of individuals that felt like because they were a sheriff or because they were a dispatcher, or because they were corrections, they couldn't call that number because it said police. So we changed the name to Law Enforcement Helpline in the hopes that it would be more encompassing and more welcoming to the rest of the community to reach out for help. In 2019, we added another component. We added a family component. So we now have trained family members that work the phone lines as well. So a family member can call the same number, identify themselves as a family member of law enforcement, and they will be connected with another family member to help them through whatever that crisis may be. Now, all of this obviously is 100% confidential. Confidentiality is paramount. It is the bedrock of everything we do. So if someone were to call that number, which is 716-858-COPS, and look for assistance, there's nothing recorded. There's no information taken down. All you have to do is give us the phone number to call you back at, and then whoever it is, either the law enforcement peer or the family peer, will help that person through whatever it is that they have going on, and if necessary, get them additional services beyond just that phone call. So that's kind of in a nutshell how we got to be where we are today.
Okay. And when someone calls that number, and you said that that is 100% confidential, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now let me put up the screen here, because I know that we spoke, both you, Melissa, and I earlier about the support group. And one of the things that came out that I spoke to you earlier on the Tom Bowerly show on WBEN 930 in Buffalo was there was a lot of family members that are affected between the burnout of their either themselves or their spouses. There was a lot of angst and anxiety and a lot of stress on the home life, not only for what you mentioned earlier, the stressors on the job, but there's also a lot with the stressors off the job. And it was really refreshing when I heard Melissa, not that anybody wants to see anybody go through a moment of crisis, but being, the wife of a law enforcement officer and having a similar impact. Could you explain how you guys are actually helping and beneficial to the families? Because I think that part often gets missed.
The biggest thing is just for them to know that they're not alone. They're not the only ones going through that. I felt isolated on my own island. I'm not comparing to what corrections is going through right now, but my husband changed. The job changed him. And it affected our marriage. And I took it personally sometimes because he'd finally be off and home with us and he wasn't the same person. And I listened to some of the Bowerly show and was hearing the same things. And I just sat in my car crying because it's affects all of them. And just again, to know that they're not alone and just trying to offer support and be there for them. We tend to it's not talking about our spouse. We're not trying to, talk bad about them, but when you realize what this job has done to them and for that officer as well, it's like, okay, this is the job that's changing me. It's not anything else. Cause sometimes you think the grass is going to be greener on the other side.
Right.
And it's working on what is going on at home. And with corrections, my heart goes out to all of them because I don't know how to make that easier and for it to change. It is a lot of the departments now, they're getting forced for overtime. They can't take off easily anymore. It is even in the police departments as well, but I know it's worse in corrections. And so we started the support group to just have a safe space for them to come and talk. Again, we're not bad-mouthing their spouses or their job. That's not what it is. But we understand what it's like to be a single parent and for the changes to just happen in the home with both of us.
Yeah, there's been a lot of that. I mean, if you listen to the one story of the young lady on the Bowerly show, she was not able because she was getting mandated all the time. And everyone, obviously Tony and everyone knows, and we've all experienced it. There's shift work involved. You're working, you get recalled in, you're working holidays. It's not easy on the family to begin with. You're missing birthdays and holidays and Christmas just because it's the nature of the job we signed up for. We understand that. But when you're getting mandated and doing, 24-hour shifts lately, it really puts more of a stress on home. And this young lady that called in onto the WBEN, she was explaining how, she would get mandated at work and there was nobody there to get the child off the bus, onto the bus. And I think a lot of people lose sight of what happens. I mean, corrections is a little bit different. Police, as Tony knows, you're whether good, bad, or indifferent, you're on the news. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad.
Yes.
But you're somewhat in the spotlight. No one knows what goes on corrections to begin with. It's behind. It's not sensationalized in the movies. Yes, but it's not accurate. Nobody knows what goes on between the walls or the fences. And then when you couple that with this young lady, it said, you mentioned that you cried in your car. And at one of my last podcasts, I had read a letter that she had wrote, and it brought a tear to my eye because I just cannot imagine going to work, dealing with the negativity that the environments that we've all worked in the past. But now you couple that with not seeing your own children and having that. So in a situation where for her, what would you recommend, or how would the Western New York Law Enforcement Helpline help her? And I believe that right after her call, her fiance called in as well. And how just walk me through how that phone call, or how they would reach out for help, so others that may be experiencing that can understand the concept and go through that procedure.
So I'll kind of explain how it works. So that number, that's 716-858-COPS. If someone calls that number, it rings into 911 Services MERS. That is a designated phone line. It is not hooked up through the enhanced 911 system. So therefore, we have no information coming in on where that call is. It is the only phone in 911 that is not 911 enhanced specifically for that purpose. So they will call in. They'll either identify as a law enforcement or a family, so that we know who to hook them up with. Then every 24-hour period from 7 at night to 7 at night the following day, we have 2 peers that are on for both the law enforcement side and the family side. Beyond that, we have a consultant that takes a week at a time, kind of as an oversight, just to make sure. So it depends. Now, in 2023, I said we had over 5,000 contacts. Over 60% of the contacts were general stress issues. It's not always the critical incident. It's not always admin. It is really the bulk of the work that we do is the general stress. So it can range from anything. It can range from the fact that, again, the spouse isn't there and they had to miss an event, and it's difficult for that spouse, the other spouse, male or female, to have to always be the one picking up the slack and always explaining why the other parent isn't at a play or at a game or whatever. It becomes difficult. So once they call and they make that call in, they get hooked up with either, again, the law enforcement or the family member, and then they will go through the process and find out exactly what it is that they're dealing with at that point in time. Again, 100% confidential. We're not taking any notes. We're not getting anything down as far as that. And then we see where they are at that point in time. If we feel as though it is necessary that maybe their level of stress and anxiety is to a level beyond our skill set for a phone call, we have an entire list of clinicians, therapists, psychologists, and psychiatrists that we have personally vetted to be first responder competent. That is extremely important because, and it sounds like a joke, but it's true. If you send a first responder to a generic therapist who has no idea about that world or that culture, by the time they're done with that hour session, they're going to need to go see a therapist themselves because it is so overwhelming. It's true. It's sad to say, but it's true.
It is sad
so
to say.
On the great lengths to make sure that all of the people that we are working with on that end in the mental health community are fully understandable and culturally competent to assist on both the first responder end and the family end. And then depending, so we will do follow-up phone calls. If they give us their information to follow up, we will check in with them and see how they're progressing, what's going on. And basically, like Melissa already said, the bottom line is it's okay to not be okay. What's not okay is to not ask for help. The help is available. That's what we are there for. That's what this is about, is helping those individuals. And for a long time, the family got left behind. And
Right.
The way we look at it is it should be a holistic approach across everything, right? Not just the family at home, but the family at work as well. You have to also be looking at the sworn individuals, the unsworn individuals, right? Maybe the people that are fixing the cars in the department. You have to give that same assistance to everyone, because when something traumatic or stressful happens, it affects everybody the same. And it doesn't matter what color uniform you're wearing. Stress is stress, trauma is trauma. We have to get away from that. And for the first responder, if home is in a bad place and work is in a bad place, where's that first responder going to end up? Most likely, where are they going to be? Probably at the bar, right? Which is definitely not the place we want them to be when they're already in a bad place. So that's the whole purpose of all of the work that we are doing, is to get them the help on both sides that is desperately needed.
And just to back it up, that with the phone call, that talking is healing. When you're finally, I'm sure all those people that were able to call the Barley Show and talk about what was going on probably helped, just made them feel a little bit better and heard. And, obviously not seen, but people heard them. And the more that you talk about it, you feel less crazy about everything. Because again, going back to, you just feel like you're the only one. And so that's what helps with the peer-to-peer support, is just being able to listen. And it helps the more that you're able to talk about what you're going through. We don't have a magic wand to be able to make it all go away, but the more you can talk about it and work through things, it helps.
And that's why the spouse group sometimes is so important. That the peer work is great one-to-one, but that group dynamic has a special magic to it, because when you sit around a table and you're sharing common experiences, I always tell them in the beginning of the meeting, you're not the unicorn you think you are. You're thinking that it's just you. You're the one that's irritable. You're the one that can't sleep at night. You're all of these. It's everybody. These same things are affecting everyone. And once you can sit there and hear that, it starts to give you the ability to have permission to be like, oh, it's not just me. It's okay. It's a great service that they're doing on the spouse group. It really is.
Yeah, and I appreciate what both of you are doing, and that we're trying to make more awareness of it, because I was really touched, not to keep harping on the Tom Bowerly show, but it led, because of so many people that called, it led to another show. And, he even brought it up himself, is like, I can hear it in your voice and it sounds like you need help. And I didn't really think about that until he said that, but a lot of people were doing just what Melissa just said, that they were like, they were just happy that somebody was able to hear them. And, the one wife, she called into the show, and I don't know if you remember, Melissa, but she was, talking about her husband always being gone. And she was worried about when he was in Iraq, and he had left for Iraq and then came back, and how that, like, she's more worried today. And what does that tell you? Because he's always at work, and he's always, stressed and missing his children's events, that he's more stressed now that he's home back in Western New York than he was in Iraq. And that was really an eye opener. And it wasn't just one story. It was coupled by one story after another and another. So I have to take my hat off to the both of you for, joining me on the show and giving some awareness and letting people know exactly what you do and how you do it. And just so I know, because how do you guys raise the funds? Melissa said that she works part-time. And how do you guys actually raise your funds to be able to provide this great service?
Actually, because of the fact it's a non-for-profit, we end up having to do a lot of fundraising on our own. We have to do raffles and things like that. There are certain organizations that have come on board to assist us, like FAM, Firefighter for Arnold Memorial. They've come through and assisted with funding, because again, if someone calls that phone number, we don't say, well, if you're a fireman, we're not going to help you. We don't say, well, if you're an EMS person, we're not going to help you, right? We're there to help everyone. And the issue is that it's unfortunate that we don't have designated sources of funding in the state for this kind of things. There are certain states that do, but unfortunately right now we don't have that ability in New York State. That would be a huge help. We do have an RFP right now with the county that we're under for this calendar year. For the first time in the history of the organization, we were able to actually get funding from the county to run some of the programs that we've been running this past calendar year, which has been a great help.
Wow, that is great to hear. So if someone, especially for those that are on the audio portion of our podcast, if someone wanted to donate or get in touch or mail a check, how would they go about doing that?
Go ahead, Melissa.
We have a P.O. Box 1014 that's in Buffalo, New York. Zip code is 14220. Just good old check will do. We also have a PayPal account which is the Western New York Law Enforcement Helpline, and also Venmo as well.
Oh, I didn't know about the Venmo. That's great. So for those that are on the audio, there is a donate button, on the www.Western New York WNY Law Enforcement Helpline.org. And there will be a link to the podcast for that. There is a donate button there for those that want to donate. And then if you want to do the old fashioned way, like I still write checks, Melissa gave you the information for that. And that's also on the website. So if we can just walk down some of these, we have the one brochure that's up now, the Western New York Law Enforcement Helpline and the immediate peer support assistance call. And just the going down the list, especially for those that can't see it on our audio, on the audio version of the podcast, Tony or Melissa, if you just want to list some of those services that you talked about before, but just go into a little bit of the each category that you have listed here on your brochure. Suicide prevention training. I know that there was a workshop and what have you that are coming out, and I'll post that in a minute. Having lost two when I was or more than two actually, officers. Obviously, the law enforcement, I believe, you probably have better statistics than I, have a higher suicide rate than those of the general public. And having lost a couple friends at the Gowanda through my many years there to suicide, it kind of touches home with me there. But I just want people to realize that obviously that's a big, everybody wants to prevent any type of suicide, but that's not only service that you perform for your agency.
Correct. As you can see, for those that can see the brochure, first two things talk about the confidentiality, right? Because we're going to go back to that again and again and again. That is the bedrock. That is paramount. Everything stays confidential. We offer wellness workshops for first responders. That was put together by two of our peers, Detective Mark Battieri, who's now retired, and Detective Sam Kozlowski from Amherst PD. And those are a wellness workshop where we bring individuals together for a day of training, talking about stress and trauma and coping mechanisms. And again, what I talked about earlier, right? Getting that shared experience of sitting around the table and hearing and listening to other people, going through the same issues and the same problems. We do the suicide prevention training. I go out many times to different agencies and do an entire presentation on law enforcement suicide. And unfortunately, you're right, the numbers are extremely high. Every single year, we lose more law enforcement officers to themselves as opposed to the numbers that are killed in the line of duty by a bullet or car accidents every single year. And that has to change. And that's really our main goal and our main focus now is to try to do as much pre-incident education. Because unfortunately, in our professions, all of them, it's not the if, it's the when. The bad times are coming. And the better you can be prepared for that, the better you can ride out those storms. So we also teach through the ICISF, the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation. We teach classes on assisting individuals in crisis. We also teach on group crisis intervention. And I'll let Melissa talk about some of the other ones that the families are doing.
If I could just back it up 1 second, all of our peers are trained through the ICSF courses. They have to take those. They have to go through an interview process, and they have to have a referral to us. It's not just anyone can sign up. We want to make sure that they're doing it for the right reasons, and they're going to be confidential. We also do acts of kindness. We hear of a critical incident that happened or a family that's struggling. We have stuff here in our office that's been donated to us. We put together a basket for the family and either deliver it to the station or directly to the house.
And they really go above and beyond with that. They'll get the information on the family. So there will be something in that basket for the spouse, for the children, for the pets in the house. And it really is to make sure that they're getting that plus the information to get a hold of us or anyone in the organization if the need arises at some point in time during their crisis.
No, that's great. That's great.
We also go to the departments to do debriefs after an incident. That's a huge thing. Again, when you're able to just sit down and talk about the shared experience, and again, they don't feel alone.
We're also doing, we do peer training. So we help go to the different departments. Unfortunately, New York State last year did a good thing. DCJS came out with a mandate that any law enforcement agency in the state of New York that it's accredited has to have a viable wellness program. But unfortunately, that's where the mandate ended. There was no funding put along with that. There were no guidelines. There was no structure. So we want to make sure that everyone is doing the right things for their officers, right? Because there's a lot of people out there with good intentions, but if you're not doing the right things, you could be doing much more harm than good. And we want to make sure that no department is just checking a box saying, oh yeah, we have a wellness program. We want to go in there and assist them in putting that together. And like she said, with all of our peers taking those classes, everyone speaks the same language. Everyone understands the same methodology. Everyone's doing the same thing to make sure that we're delivering the best services we possibly can.
That's great. And I applaud you for that, obviously. This goes back, now we have let me go back to page 1, the other side of the brochure. Just wanted to make sure that we're not missing any information, or at least I'm not, in the materials that are provided. And if anybody wants a brochure other than the link at the website, just reach out to me and I'll gladly provide that for you. So providing, just to read this verbatim, providing support to law enforcement officers, dispatchers, and their families since 2008. So this was originally started in 2008 after the police helpline?
That's when the police helpline started, was 2008. That was the beginning of it. Yes.
Okay.
And you said earlier a little bit about the stats and facts regarding law enforcement and just trauma in general. So I can give off law enforcement. So they did a study, police1.com did a study a few years ago and said that an average law enforcement officer per calendar year on patrol witnesses approximately 188 incidents of trauma.
Wow.
Homicides, suicides, motor vehicle accidents, assaults, child abuse, right? The list goes on and on. But for first responders, obviously that's a cumulative effect, right? Because there's so much and it's over and over and over. So if you look at that number of 188 over a 20-year career, you're talking 3,760 incidents of trauma that they've witnessed. The human mind is not made to see that amount of trauma in lifetimes, let alone a 20-year career. And I'm sure the numbers have to be maybe even higher in corrections when you're inside 24/7 with them, right? So these are the things that we need to be looking at. These are the things we need to be talking about. There's a fantastic website. It was originally called bluehelp.org. They've now changed the name to First Help, 1ST. help.org. They are tracking law enforcement suicide. They're tracking all suicides now from across the country dating back to 2016. They include law enforcement, corrections, fire, EMS. They're tracking all of that information. And I looked at the website briefly this morning. I believe we're at 97 law enforcement for this calendar year since January, 91 males and 6 females. And the only thing with that, though, those numbers aren't exact, because if someone decides they don't want to put their family member into that database, it doesn't get counted. It doesn't mean that suicide didn't happen, it just means it's not counted for in that database.
Understood.
So these are the reasons why and these are the reasons why we're working so hard, again, on as much pre-incident education before we get to that point.
And the numbers are definitely lower than what they were last year at this time, which I think is a testament to the peer support that is going on and taking, hopefully all across the country, things that I follow, I believe that it is. And so hopefully it's helping.
Yeah, especially at this day and age, not to get into, politics, but as, law enforcement has continued to be demonized through the public. I mean, you're getting it from all ends. You're getting it, a hit from, the John Q public that listens to the news that may or may not be true. And you're getting a hit for it at your job. And then, it's just, where does the cycle end? And the violence has, at least from what I've seen in the, using New York State statistics only because I know them for corrections, is, the assaults and the degree of assaults is higher. And not only is it higher than the year before, but it's the highest that it's ever been. In the last podcast of last week, we had the mental health nurse on, going out for Deidre Maldonado she works at Fishkill Correctional Facility, and she was speaking to things that I never thought of, that, that an officer, just something that maybe not have been violent to them, but just having CPR and then having an inmate that may have expired of natural causes, and they were just doing something, or may have been an incident that those individuals were not the same because they've never seen an incident like that, whether they be, have 1 month on the job or they have 20 years on the job. You know how it is, even in police, you could go your whole career without having a bad day, though usually that doesn't happen, but you're going to experience at least one in your career, and sometimes you're going to experience one a week. So it's just a matter of the luck of the draw, so to speak. But that she touched on a point that I'd never even thought of, and it's like the officers needed help afterwards, and it was simple because they were shock may be the better word. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, so correct me if I'm wrong, but she was like, even after the CPR, they've never seen a dead body before, and they were not the same afterwards.
Right. It definitely is another level of trauma and stress when you have that close proximity and that personal contact as well. For an individual, that very first time can be very difficult. Obviously, in the law enforcement in that career, you see those things way too many times. A lot of times I say you see those 2 or 3 times before lunch, sometimes on a single day. And that just becomes problematic with the stress and the accumulation over and over and over. And when you can't find ways to deal with them as you go along, we call it the backpack, right? Everybody has the backpack, and each one of these critical incidents, you're throwing another brick in the backpack and another brick in the backpack. Over your career, that backpack gets pretty heavy because it's not your body that's carrying it, it's your mind. And if you can't get that straight, if you're not doing the things that you need to do to take care of you, you can't take care of other people, right? If you have children and you've flown on an airplane, you've always heard them say, right, if we have a loss of cabin pressure, the masks are going to fall. Please make sure to put your mask on first.
Right.
If you're not taking care of you, you can't take care of anybody else. And that's true. Another thing that we focus on very much through the helpline and through the trainings that we do for departments is it sounds very selfish, but you have to start taking care of you first.
No, that's a very good point. And a lot of people lose sight of that, but that's a pretty good analogy for having just flown the other day and hearing that exact same speech to, before you can take care of anyone else. Yeah. The last brochure that we have here, I just wanted to add that to the stage really quick, is the training course announcement. Obviously, this is coming up in a couple days, but obviously, I'm sure this is not your only workshop. But if you can get a little detail on what comes to light with your workshops and how people sign up and what that actually involves.
I'll take that one.
I think Tony touched on that earlier. It's the wellness workshop open to all first responders. We've had a mix every time between fire, dispatch, police, corrections. We limit it to 10 people max, just to give people the time to be able to speak. It's just kind of diving into a little bit more peer support. There's no, training, no screens going on. We're just talking, sitting at a table, and it just makes people feel a little bit lighter walking out. We put them on once a month. I think we'll probably take December off with the Christmas right around now, but we'll pick back up in January. But yeah, October 22nd, I believe we have 2 seats available for that. And then November is still open. That may be tough with Thanksgiving week, so we may have to postpone that, but we'll see how it goes.
No, great. And the last flyer, I just want to add up again. We had it up once, but I just want to put it again for the spouses and partners and significant others of Western New York. So obviously, just like what we talked about earlier on the Tom Bowerly show, I just want people to know that this is not just for spouses and married couples.
Right. Yes, anyone is welcome. And I know it says Western New York. Obviously, if anyone wants to drive out of Western New York, we're more than welcome to. Same thing with the helpline. We've had people call from out of state before. We will help anyone. We just may not have a resource for them if they need a therapist, but we'll talk to anyone from anywhere.
Gotcha. And when you spoke before about the therapist, so that is all centrally Western New York located for those therapists that are for in the area, so to speak?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
However, the majority of them will also do work via Zoom as well. So if there was someone from another area that was looking to get assistance and scheduling wise, they could make that work. They could also provide services via, it's not Zoom, obviously it's a medical one that's private and confidential, but same concept.
Oh, that's great.
We also work with NYLEAP, New York Law Enforcement Assistance Program. They put on post-critical incident seminars, and we've been able to help host some of them in Buffalo. We'll have another one in Buffalo in March. That is an amazing 3-day seminar. But with that, though, we have connections to other therapists across the state, too, and we can go through them that have vetted clinicians as well.
Great. Now, just out of curiosity, and kind of putting you on the spot because I just thought about it when you said that. So, has anyone ever from any correctional facility, not personally, but I mean, as far as an overall incident, has anyone ever reached out to provide services for like a group setting or like a facility, or whether it be county or state? I mean, has that happened? Just
Again, with confidentiality, we can't really answer that question in that respect. However, I will say that we will assist with any of the needs regarding those things. If an agency reaches out to us, we will definitely assist them with that.
Okay. Because I know that, and just from my time going back, I've been retired for a couple of years now, that we had CISM teams and people that came in and spoke. I won't speak of the incidents, but overall, but I didn't know if there was like a mass casualty incident or whatever, if, whether it be the county, state, city, whatever, if there was something that was in place and organized. I know what certain teams do, but a lot of people, for lack of a better word, I mean, they're in the state, they've always had the employees assistance program or whatever, but a lot of people were always reluctant to either speak to somebody because they knew it was facility related. Sometimes it worked in their favor where they knew that person and they felt comfortable talking to them. And other people wanted to go the complete opposite way and didn't want to have anything to do with somebody that was in that agency, for a couple of reasons. One, they may have been just didn't want to talk to them because they were ashamed, or they didn't want their business. They thought that it wouldn't be confidential. Obviously, I don't think that would be the case, but that's how people feel. I know that, a lot of people when I was the union president came to me and said that, can you point me in a different direction? Because I don't want to speak to anybody at this facility. I want to speak to an outside agency. So I'm sure that comes across a lot. Am I correct? And would I say that?
And that's why the helpline is so important, because of the fact that we don't associate with any of the specific departments, right? Because it is 100% confidential. So someone can call us from any of the where, and it's not going back. It doesn't get reported back to the admin. It doesn't get reported back to the union. No one knows. The only two people that know that conversation occurred are the two people on the phone. That's it. And that, yes, we have that all the time. And that's why it's important to not only have the peers in the department, but having the helpline as a backup, because exactly what you just said, something may happen in a facility that they don't feel comfortable talking to their peers in that facility because of whatever reason it may be, a shame, worry, whatever. They have the helpline to go to instead.
Yeah, thank you for that, because that comes up and it's a lot. And as we all know, I mean, having been there myself in law enforcement, we all think that we're tough and we don't need help, and a lot of people are afraid to ask for help, or they just don't know where to go. And, to me, I've always found that once you start a conversation with somebody, Melissa, you touched on that earlier, then it kind of breaks the ice and opens up. And then they really don't know where to go once they start having that conversation. So the more people that are involved that can point them, into the right direction is appreciated. So I applaud you for, coming out and doing what you're doing, because, one is too many, but how many, bad incidents have we seen that the outcomes are less than desirable? And it just seems that now having done 30 years, that the stigma was a lot worse when I first started than it was when I left. And I think the stigma now today is not as bad as even when I left, 4 years ago. Right. So I think the message is getting out, thanks to people like you two that are actually, supporting and getting out that, hey, there is somewhere to turn to.
And it's never too late, and it's never too early to start working on these things. And I will put my information out there because I think it helps with that. So I did the 33 years of BPD, like I said earlier, and I had my own issues. And for a long time, I ignored them. I suffer from depression. I suffer from suicidal ideation, but doing this work has helped me. And it took me 33 years to finally go. 3 days before I retired, I finally went and sat down with a therapist. And I see that therapist every single week. And I put it out there because I know there's other individuals out there that were like me, that were hiding and pretending. It's a horrible way to live, and you do not have to live that way. There's a much better way to do things. And she said it earlier, in the talking is a lot of healing. It truly is.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I didn't know that your story. So thank you, Tony, for sharing that with us. That obviously you're not afraid to put that out there. And there are, just from speaking to people and listening to what we just recently listened to in Western New York, there's a lot of people that are feeling that exact same way.
We always say that every one of us has a why. Every one of us has a why that we do this. And that's how we ended up there, right? From our own stressors and traumas throughout life. And we just do everything we possibly can now to help others realize you don't have to live that way. It's okay.
Well, and I want to thank you again for the work that you're both doing and helping others. I can't thank you enough for any way that I can support and get the message out. And hopefully we can do this again and raise more awareness. And obviously it's I know it's time consuming for you, but I think the message is a great one to get out and worth repeating.
Absolutely. Whatever we can do to get the message out there is what we're doing.
And I appreciate that. Is there any last words of wisdom that you have for me or anyone else, Tony or Melissa, that you'd like to get out there? And obviously we'll share your links of the website, but anything that you'd like to close with to make sure that we get your message out and support, that we can support you in any way?
Especially to the families, the spouses, partners, just know that you're not alone, and to please call if you ever need someone to talk to.
The helpline is there for exactly that purpose, to help. There is help available. Like I said earlier, it's okay to not be okay. What's not okay is to not ask for help. Help is there. We'll do what we can.
Thank you. And thanks again to both of you for taking the time to walk us through exactly the wellness and the support that you provide, because that's greatly appreciated. And I learned a lot today. And we'll close the podcast with the same message that we give out every week is, be kind, and you never know what the person next to you is going through. So with that, we want to thank Melissa and Tony for being with us. And that'll be the end of today's podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
You've been listening to the Working in Hell podcast with Vinny Blasio. Find this podcast on any of your favorite platforms like Audible, iHeart, and Spotify. And be sure to check out www.workinginhell.com for more information and important links. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.